And so I want us to take a look at a particular portion of scripture that I think it's applicable to where we are today, especially in this season that the country's in right now, and in times where there's a lot of division. This whole political season has just been a very divisive time, and a lot of people have suffered. A lot of people are struggling. They're stressed out. They're anxious. uh the economy's bad. Our money is tight, and we're just dealing with a lot. And if we're not careful, these things can take its toll on us mentally. These things can take their toll on us emotionally, even spiritually. And I personally believe that the devil actually uses these things to trip up God's people. He'll use anxieties through relationships and through the economy, through the social struggles. He'll use those things to trip up God's people. And so I want us to quickly turn to Philippians chapter number 4, and do keep in mind that what we're going to be doing, we're going to do this quick today. And I see, Rod, we need you to kill your camera, sir, and mute your microphone.
Hey. Oh, sorry.
There we go. Good to see you, brother. All right. And so I want us to go to Philippians chapter number 4, and we're going to read all the way down to verse number 9. Philippians 4, verse number 9. Or excuse me, verse 1 through 9. Hang on a second. Okay. All right. And Rod, you're going to want to cut your camera off as well, sir. We're going to need you to cut off your camera.
I'm going to have to hang it up because I don't know how to do it. This is my first. I don't even do Zoom. I don't know how to cut it off.
Let me talk you through it real quick.
Okay.
So all you have to do is you should see. I'll tell you what, I should be able to do it for you. Hang on. Let me see if I can for you. Hang on a second. I'm struggling with my own. All right. There we go. Let's see. Okay, I got your camera cut. All you got to do is mute your microphone, and then we're good.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Yes, sir. All right, so Philippians chapter 4, verses 1 all the way down to number 9. It says, therefore, and we're in a New Living Translation, by the way. It says, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, it says, stay true to the Lord. It says, I love you and long to see you, dear friends, for you are my joy and the crown I receive for my work. Now I appeal to Euodia and Syntyche, or whatever her name is. It says, please, because you belong to the Lord, he says, settle your disagreement. He says, and I ask you, my true partner, to help these two women, for they worked hard with me in telling others the good news. So just to understand what's happening, a couple of sisters in the church who had been active and involved in ministry had gotten into some sort of an issue. They had some sort of a problem. And apparently this thing elevated to the point where the Apostle Paul, it got to him. And it hurts him to see that his sisters are fighting. And so he asked for somebody to step in and help him. He says, man, these folks are powerful women of God. We don't need to get distracted by these little squabbles. So he says, step in and help. He goes on to say, they worked along with Clement and the rest of my co-workers whose names are written in the book of life. And now he goes on to say, always be full of joy in the Lord. I say it again, rejoice. Let everyone see that you are considerate in all that you do. Remember, the Lord is coming soon. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Wow. He goes on to say, tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done. Now, we're talking about the context of going from squabbles, going from fights, going from disagreements. Now he's talking about keeping joy. And he's telling you, pray about everything. He says, don't worry about these things, but pray about everything. And then he says, tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done. Thanksgiving. We believe in that at Remnant Park Church. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice all you have learned and received from me. Everything you heard from me and saw me doing. Don't you wish more pastors had that type of attitude? You know, put to practice what you heard and saw me doing. Saw me doing. Wow. It says, then the God of peace will be with you. Now, today, in this very quick time, this very quick Bible study, I want to talk to you on how to achieve true peace. How to achieve true peace. And we're going to deal specifically in relationships. Now, here's the thing with Paul. Paul, in my personal opinion, is probably one of the more relatable apostles when it comes to pastoring. So for me, when I read of all the apostles and their writings and their contributions to the church, I find that the Apostle Paul is probably the most relatable one. He's incredibly honest and he's very transparent. And for me, that's humbling, because a man who can accomplish so much, yet literally wear his emotions on his sleeve, that to me is powerful, especially if you knew Paul's history. Paul's a tough dude. And Paul didn't take it. He was tough. Yet, once God got a hold of him, and once he started interacting with people, once he started ministering to people, then something changed Paul. And so we see this kind of openness in the letter to the Philippians, which is written right around 55 AD. Which is about 9 years before Paul was to be killed. Paul died somewhere around 64, 65 AD. And so we see that because Paul had this incredibly dangerous lifestyle, you know, preaching the gospel in its early days was dangerous. Everyone who preached the gospel was murdered, was killed, was sentenced to death. And so, yet he still did it. See, these are the things that humble me, because y'all heard me joke about it. Sometimes I don't feel like coming to church and I'm the pastor. I crack jokes about that. Can you imagine me telling that to the Apostle Paul after he had just been imprisoned, after he had just been beaten and left for dead, after he had just been bitten by a poisonous viper that jumped out of a fire? I mean, it humbles you when you read about just how how real his life was. And so because Paul was so real, because he knew that his tomorrows were not promised, that every sermon that he preached could have been his last, here's what we know about Paul. He didn't mince words. He did not mince words. And another thing that we learned is that Paul valued friendships, and Paul valued relationships. Paul loved people. You cannot not love people while at the same time ministering to them, seeing God change their lives, seeing people healed, seeing people delivered, seeing lives completely turn around. It creates a love in people. That's why I can tell when someone really loves God by how they love other people. Because if you love God as much as we claim we do, then we are going to share God with as many people as we can. And furthermore, we're going to make sure that the people that we share God with come to an understanding that not only does God love them, but God wants to see them completely prosperous. Paul was devoted his life to this. And so Paul valued friendships, he valued relationships, he valued people. And I love the opening part of Philippians 4. He says, my dear brothers and sisters. He calls them brothers and sisters. First of all, y'all got to hear the language that he's using. You don't just call somebody a brother or a sister unless there's an affection there, unless there's some sort of familial connection there. And so right off the bat, we see how close he is to them. And then he gives them advice. He says, stay true to the Lord. Okay. We always should encourage each other. Hey, stay true to the Lord. Stay true to, what God is doing in your life. You can do this. You can make it. Encourage your brother, encourage your sister. He goes on to say, I love you and long to see you, dear friends, for you are my joy and my crown that I receive for my work. That is a man who has been active in people's lives. This is a man who has become attached to the people. You see why this is relatable as a pastor? Because Jesus even gave us the example or the correlation that the sheep know the shepherd's voice, and that the shepherd, the good shepherd, would lay down his life for the sheep. That's why for me, this is relatable, because I love every single person that is a part of Remnant Park, whether they have come and left or whether they're still here. Everyone that my wife and I have had firsthand experience with mentoring and counseling and developing and baptizing and praying with. We absolutely love you guys. And so one of the things that we see that comes out of this is a plea and an urgency to encourage people to make sure that you are maintaining peace. And in this case, we're going to talk about peace through relationships. Because like I said, relationships were important to Paul. But here's the thing about relationships. Relationships, whether it's a friendship, whether it's an intimate relationship with your husband or wife, whether it's whatever, a relationship with your neighbor, coworker, classmate, relationships can be one of the biggest sources of stress, worry, and anxiety. We're constantly concerned about how relationships are going, how they're going to play out. And so one of the things that we understand is the devil uses relationships, and he uses them. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Hang on a second here. So one of the things that we realize is that the devil uses relationships as a source of trouble for us to rob us of our peace. Remember, today's title is How We're Going to Achieve True Peace. And so we have to understand that ever since the beginning, the devil has tried to put us against each other so that we will be stressed out, anxious, worried about the relationship and not have peace with God. Think about how the devil deceived Eve and tricked her into giving Adam the forbidden fruit. He used Eve against Adam. He used Cain to kill Abel. And all throughout the Bible, there have been relationships that have caused people to literally fall. Relationships, the things that we allow people to have power over us. These things have caused us to lose out on all of the peace that God has available. And so when we seek to achieve peace, it has to start with how we relate to people, because the devil is going to use the relationships in your life to steal peace from you. Listen to this in Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews 12 verses 14 and 15. He says, work at living in peace with everyone and work at living a holy life. It says, for those who are not holy will not seek the Lord. Now it goes on to say, look after each other so that none of you fails to receive the grace of God. We got to look out for each other. If you see someone struggling, it's up to you to look out for that individual. We have to get to a point where we love and we care enough about each other that, yeah, we might have to get a little nosy. Hey, brother, how you doing? You okay? How you doing? All it takes is a text message. I'm not even asking you to call. I'm just saying, shoot somebody a text every now and then. If the Lord lays a person on your heart to pray for them, you pray for them and let them know you're praying. Goes on to say, look after each other so that none of you fails to receive God, the grace of God. Watch out so that no poisonous root of bitterness grows up to trouble you, corrupting many. Where does this root of bitterness come from? It comes from us not having peace with people. It comes from bad relationships. And trust me, when you are in a bad relationship, whether, like I said, it doesn't matter the type of relationship, it's easy for us to get bitter. So we're warned about these things. You can't have peace with God and at the same time be bitter and angry and resentful to your brother or your sister or to whomever you're in a relationship with. So this is the challenge to having true peace. It says work at it. Hebrews 12 and 14, you got to work at having peace with everybody, including the people that don't like you. Yeah, that's why Jesus said you got to pray for your enemies. You got to love them that don't love you. That's how you're going to get peace. That's how you're going to be able to sleep at night without worrying about whether the relationship is going to work out. You can't give people power over you. You have to prioritize your peace over bad relationships. And here's another thing you can do, is you can attach yourself with good relationships that reinforce your peace. If somebody is bad for you, then they need to be put in timeout. I say that all the time. I'm not telling you to cut them off, just put them in timeout. Why? Because your peace is more important. Listen to what Jesus said about family. And I preached this many times. Jesus said in Matthew chapter number 10, starting at verse 34. I'll read down to verse 37. He says, don't imagine that I came to bring peace to the earth. I came not to bring peace, but a sword. He says, I come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. He goes on to say, your enemies will be right in your own household. Your enemies will be them people that you live with. Wow, Jesus. He says, if you love, now this is the point he's making. If you love your father or mother more than you love me, you are not worthy of being mine. Or if you love your son or your daughter more than me, you are not worthy of being mine. That's the point he's trying to make. This is about prioritizing peace. You can't let relationships come between you and Jesus. You can't let relationships come between you and the Prince of Peace. And so if we're going to have peace in our lives, the main thing that the devil uses is relationships. We got to learn how to prioritize that second to Jesus. That's why he said, I come to divide people. Not that he's trying to create an issue with people's households. He's trying to say, look, somebody in the house is going to choose me over you. You better get over it. And he's telling them, you better choose me over them people in your house. I have to be the most important thing. Who is he? He's the Prince of Peace. So we learned that the Apostle Paul was incredibly passionate about these things. And I'm wrapping this up. I told y'all I was going to be real fast today, but I need to encourage you that the devil is after your peace, because if he can stress you out, if he can have you feeling anxious, if he can have you worried about these relationships in your life that the devil is using to hurt you, if he can do that, then you will never achieve a certain level with God that helps you to sleep at night, that keeps the gray out of your hair before it's time. We need to fight for our peace. So how do you achieve peace? Well, we already read about it in Philippians. Let me go back. He said, pray about everything. Don't worry about anything. And then he said, God's peace will exceed everything you can understand. We've been talking about prayer. Make sure you're doing that. If you're having problem with the relationship, pray about it. Pray that you can have peace over the issue, and then pray that you can somehow communicate that peace with the other person. This may mean you need to apologize first. This may mean that you have to tell a person, look, I need you to respect my boundaries because I'm chasing after my peace right now. Life is already too hard. I don't need problems with my brother or sister. Just like the Apostle Paul pointed out here. We need to work these disagreements out. And if you need to get somebody involved, get them involved. But we don't need beef. We don't need issues that create the stresses and the anxieties that come from broken relationships. So we need to not worry about it, and we need to pray about everything. This is what he's telling us. And then he goes on to say, fix your thoughts on what is true, what is honorable, what is right, what's pure, what's lovely, and what's admirable. If you think on them things, I promise you the peace will come to you. This is why we do testimony service. Start just thinking on how good God is. Instead of focusing on the bad relationship that you're trying to work through, look at the good relationships that you have. If you get off the phone having argued with somebody, pick up the phone and call your brother or sister and get some encouragement. We're talking about guarding your peace today. We're not talking about allowing bitterness and anger and resentment to just sit in your heart and take root, because once the roots get deep, it's hard to pull that thing up. So I just want to encourage everybody today. If you guys have any comments or anything you want to say, feel free to open up your microphones and share. But I just want you to know, in this season, the enemy is going to use relationships to take our peace. He's going to use relationships to try and destroy our peace. People, like I always say, Republicans is fighting Democrats, and Thanksgiving dinner is going to look a little crazy this year because of this election season. But people of God, we can't let that get to us. We can't let the things that are happening in our families and in our relationships and in our jobs and in our neighborhoods and in the culture. Don't let that take your peace today. Anybody care to share any comments?
I just want to say that was a really good word. I agree with that so much. And I just wanted to say I hope that everybody has learned from 2020. I know I did. That was where God really had to deal with me like, girl, get it together. And I know from that I can't let my relationships be, tangled up and I'm mad at somebody because they look at things this way and this person is mad at me because I'm not doing it. So I appreciate this word tonight. And it's just a real quick reminder of that. Just like, hey, this thing is because I've already kind of had some debates with people, about this election. And that's why I appreciate this word to let me know, like, just don't even discuss it with people if it's going to be a debate or an argument or what have you. So thank you for the little check real quick.
And it's funny because there's an expression that says you can win the argument but lose the soul. We can do our best to try and share Jesus and try to talk about the love of God, but then we get into an argument or a debate and we know what we know, right? And most of us can literally destroy people in debates. But at the end of the day, it's not going to solve anything. It's not going to help. And we just want to, like it said in Hebrews 12, 12 and 14, it says, work at living in peace with everybody. And that's what we need to do. We got to work at it. Like Tina says, it's easy to get caught up. They get to talking and we're all passionate about what we feel, but we got to work at, let me just be quiet. Let me just let them talk. I know let me just let them win. And let me just show them some love and invite them to coffee or something. But it takes work. So appreciate those comments. Anybody else care to share? Anyone else? Okay. All right. Excellent. Well, Shanna, are you in the building? Did you want to leave any words or announcements or anything with us today? If not, we certainly understand. We're just really glad that everybody was here tonight. Good group. And we're looking forward to church this weekend. And we're excited that Everett's back in town. So I'm going to give Everett the slow clap. We missed our brother. And we can't wait to see. All right. Well, I love y'all. And it is good to see everyone. And y'all have the best week this week. And we look forward to seeing everybody in church. Good night and God bless y'all.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.